Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Today we have a very great person with us, Joost from Joost SEO. Hi there.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, our webinar series. We at SiteGround, we try to come up with a new webinar every month, always on a very helpful topic, something that people can get some practical benefit from. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and get our regular webinar whenever it is comfortable for you. Since so many of you, as usual, already asked, yes, there's going to be a recording of this and it will be uploaded right after the finish of the webinar. We're going to add it to our YouTube channel. So, again, make sure you subscribe in order not to miss any great content. Today, Joost is going to talk about what he's doing best, SEO, and what are the greatest and latest stuff that's going on in that very dynamic world. And yeah, I'm gonna leave the mic to him.
Cool. Well, thank you. Let me see if I can get those slides live for you. There we go. I'm going to go through some trends for 2021. At the same time, I do ask your questions because I'm hoping to get to those as soon as possible because that's always the most fun part of any webinar. So let's get to it. In 2021, I think we have the same problem that all of us have. We need to get SEO fit. Now, honestly, we need to get fit as well. I can see that Christo has been doing a lot better job at that than I have over the last few months during Corona. But the funny thing is that our sites, the same thing is happening to our sites as to us. Our sites are getting bigger, our sites are getting older, and you'll need to keep them fit. We're seeing more and more people with sites that have been around for 10 years and that need maintenance, that need a bit of love, really. So we really need to spend a bit more time on getting them well maintained, and then we need some power tools to really optimize them well. So I think that in 2021 there's a couple of things that you're going to have to play with, some SEO power tools to get SEO fit. One of those is, of course, schema. I saw there were already some questions dropping in from people on schema, and it's one of those topics that a lot of people are asking about. Because if you don't know what schema is, it's the stuff that makes results like this possible, or results like this. We're building a lot of stuff around that ourselves. This is actually a result that's powered by Yoast SEO already. This is not possible yet with Yoast SEO, although there are plugins that already do this. We're working on something that for recipes. We're working on something for a lot of these things to make it a lot easier. In 2021, you can expect Google to come out with more new types of schema and more new rich results types that people can play with. We really look forward to what they'll come out with, and we'll adapt to that as soon as we can, as will others, I assume. And the good thing is that Gutenberg actually helps us a lot with that. So we're able to build very nice interfaces. I don't know if any of you have ever tried a frequently asked questions block that Yoast SEO adds in the Gutenberg editor, but you can build something like this fairly easily in a Gutenberg block. Without even knowing that you're doing schema, which is what we try to do. We try to take the technical stuff away and try to make it as easy for you as possible. But schema is really one of those things that you need to play with. Now, the funny thing is that why do you need to play with schema? Well, you need to give Google an understanding of how your website works. And the other way that you have to do that is by giving it better internal linking. Because in SEO, and as your site gets bigger, the problem is that you're trying to build content around particular topics, and then most people try to do it like the person on the left. They try to build a lot of content and then forget to interlink it properly. Whereas if you interlink your content properly, getting Google to understand your site and your topics well is a really simple step. So you'll need a lot of different articles on your main topics with different angles and different approaches. And then interlink them and point people to the right content and play with that, etc. In Yoast SEO, we have internal linking suggestions, but it's honestly one of these things that is very hard as your site gets bigger. And I think that one of the main questions that we have to ask ourselves in 2021 is, are we getting lazy? Are we forgetting to maintain our site? Are we forgetting to fix the stuff that we need to fix? And also, as you keep on writing all the time, a lot of people are blogging and have been blogging for a long time, and they basically keep on writing more and more and more content. You have to ask yourself the question, is there such a thing as too much high quality content? And honestly, the answer is probably yes. There's probably a thing as too much content where you are basically cannibalizing yourself. So you are writing about that same topic, and Google doesn't even know what to show anymore on your site. So for your main keywords, do me one favor and do one thing. Go into Google, type site, and then colon. So site colon, your domain name, and then a space, and then your main keyword. And see what Google sees on your site as the content around that keyword. And what you'll see is that Google often has a lot of content that you think you've optimized really well on like position 3 or 4. And it really is that the number one result there is the thing that Google will show when it has to show a result from your page. But you really need to know what's number one there, and it needs to make sense. And you really need to make sure that you're not cannibalizing yourself, which is what's happening to a lot of people at the moment. That's not to say that you should stop writing in any way. Please keep on writing and producing good content, but update it, go back to it, combine it into bigger articles if you have multiples that are basically covering exactly the same thing. Make sure that you do all that well, and that you really match the different intents that people can have when they come to your site. So there's a lot of things that you can do on your site that affect how people think about you. And it might be that they're just finding out about your product, or they might want to purchase, and those are very different intents to come to your site. And those people should probably end up on different pages on your site because of how they search and which pages you have for them. Now, another thing to think a lot about in 2021, and Google has been talking about this an awful much, is site speed. Google has talked about core web vitals a lot, which are 3 numbers that they measure a site's speed by. And basically, you're going to have to look at that, and you're going to have to improve it. Now, luckily, if you're hosted on SiteGround, they've been doing a pretty darn good job with their plugin to help you optimize the speed of your site, because it really makes it a lot easier to optimize it. But if your theme is bad on WordPress or on any other platform, really, then this is really something that you need to look at for the coming months, because there will be a ranking boost for sites that meet all core web vitals. And if you're not getting that, your competitors will. So be sure to optimize for that. Be sure to make sure that your site is really fast and really easy to use. Now, all of that being said, and I was talking about content already, but of course, in the end, it's still about content. And content is basically driven by topics, by keywords, but keywords is not the simple thing that it was in the past anymore. Google now understands different word forms, and it has for a while. And over the last year, they came out with their new BERT algorithm, and they've basically been improving and improving and improving about how well they understand context and text in general. And the thing here is that Google is trying to mimic a human being. The funny thing is that is incredibly hard. And it's incredibly hard in some of the stuff that you would not expect. Because we see all sorts of structure in content that a computer can just not detect as easily. But it is very important to know that you need to think about different word forms, different ways, and that Google can now do that pretty well in a lot of different languages, which is why we can do this in a lot of different languages too. This is German, but I could throw this screenshot up in like 16 different languages for Yoast SEO, because we try to make this work in as many languages as possible too, where if you put in a focus keyword in singular, we will detect the plural as well. It's simple stuff like that is actually fairly hard to do for a computer that we as humans can do very well. So everybody needs to get SEO fit. You really need to look at your site again and review, am I doing a good job? Am I really maintaining my site well? And that is both in site maintenance. So am I controlling the number of 404s that I have on my site, the number of internal links that don't go anywhere, the number of, am I even really properly internal linking my site? It also means making your site fast and making it sure that it works properly on mobile. But it also means auditing your content and looking at your content a lot more. And then in 2021, I think that if there's one new thought that you might want to add into that mix, it is really about how am I addressing the intent that people have when they get to my site? How am I helping people that come to my site do what they want to do? And how can I do that with my content? So these are the things that you need to use to get SEO fit. If you're in a niche where you suddenly see all these wonderful Google results with recipes or something else, and you're not using schema, well, you need to get on it now, because you're basically already too late. If you're in a niche where that might happen at some point, think about what might happen. Think about what they might structure later on and how you could do that. Make sure that your site is fast and give it the best content. I'm going to keep it short and simple like that. And then I think we can answer a lot of questions, because I saw a whole lot of questions pop by in the chat already.
Yep. Thank you very much for this presentation. And I think that everybody's eager for us to hit the questions. As we talked briefly before going live, SEO questions are usually very, very long. So I will try to read it as fast as possible. So the first one is from David. He has most votes. How important is manually setting URLs and meta description? Surely you're increasing the chance of missing potential visitors. The search engine's selection should already be the best guess of what the person is searching for. By putting your own in, you're assuming you know better than the search engine meta description algorithm. I guess what I'm trying to say is, should I hit and hope or live in trust that my content is high quality? I think the question is basically whether they should.
Yeah, should you write your meta description? Well, yeah. Honestly, yes, if you can do it well. But the problem with writing in general is that a lot of people think they can do it well, and only a portion of people can actually do it well. So I am still very much in favor of putting in a meta description if it contains the keyword that you're page is most searched for, because then you can control it and play with it. If you can get it to show up most of the time, and it'll only show up like 50% of the time that people see your page anyway, because Google likes rewriting it regardless of whether you enter it or not. But if you can put it there and you can optimize and you can play with, hey, what happens when people click on, and maybe if I alter my meta description, a couple more will click on or not, then you can play with intent. And you can also target that text a bit more to the intent of the page that you have behind it, so you can really help people set expectations, and then you know that you're setting expectations that you can live up to. So yes, I would write it. Is it an absolute must? No. It's not the biggest problem in the world if it's not there, but I would write it.
Cool. Going to the next question. Can we cover how website speed affects SEO?
Yeah, we can. Website speed affects SEO in a multiple number of ways. First of all, to get into Google search results, Google needs to spider your website. So they need to be able to open pages on your site. And the faster your website is, the less time it takes Google to do that, which is beneficial to Google because they assign a bit of time to your site to crawl it, and the faster your website responds, the more that you can get crawled. It's really as simple as that. More importantly, Google optimizes for their user experience. So they optimize for a user coming from the search results to a page, and if they can give them a result that is faster but almost similar, they will prefer the faster result. They will prefer to actually give that user the faster page, and that's why Core Web Vitals and all these other things are so important, because in a lot of cases you are very similar to your competitor, and speed might just make the difference.
I think that answers the question pretty well. Okay, hitting another questions. They're pouring it very, very fast. We have more than 45 questions, so
that's good.
So things are moving fast, and yeah.
I was hoping for that. It's always I love it. Can I just pick them up and go from top to bottom? I can do that too.
Oh, you can. I'm just okay. I picked one, and we can go whatever you prefer.
Yeah, that's fine.
One from Stephen Yates. It's can I move aside from a domain I've had for 20 years to entirely new domain? What would be the best method, or is this a bad idea?
You can, and honestly, this has been done by others, but it's not simple. The reason you're moving should be a really good one, because most of these projects are hard to do well. So I myself was involved when The Guardian moved from guardian.co.uk to theguardian.com, which they did to attract a wider audience. They didn't want to say, hey, we're just a British newspaper, we're a wider newspaper, and it made sense for them to do that. But it was a very interesting thing, because you have a lot of URLs on that site, and you need to redirect all of them to their new equivalents in the correct way. And it will take about 6 months usually for Google to fully pick up all the redirects and for you. So be aware to lose some traffic, and that it's going to be painful.
Okay. Are we picking the top question?
Well, I'm fine with that. Yeah, this is always so. The one about the meta description are you looking at, right? Carol Matson's, or the one, or the other one is also from Stephen Yates. So that we're going to go to that to that after that.
You're gonna charge him for a consultation after?
No, absolutely not. No. So when people fill out the meta description and Google doesn't show it, that often it often doesn't do that because the keyword that people searched for was not in the meta description on your page. If it is, it will often show it, but Google might just be testing or might be playing with it. Google is annoying like that. It does stuff like that because it wants to test what it's best, what the user will respond to best, and it tries to optimize for that. Then the next question, Stephen is asking, when uploading images to the media library to use in website pages, what settings should be used in attachments? None, or web page, or something else? So that's when you add an attachment to a page, please don't link to the attachment page. It's one of the most stupid features in WordPress, and I wish we could have gotten rid of it a long time ago. Attachment pages are a thing that should not exist, and you should not link to it, and I would actually prefer to kill it entirely in WordPress core.
I totally agree with you on that. It has to be probably the most useless thing in WordPress right now.
Yeah, it's only useful for very, very specific use cases, and even there's always better solutions. The best is that question is awesome. What's the best naming convention of website files beyond including keywords? All lowercase, no spaces, dashes or underscores. Honestly, uppercase in URLs drives me nuts, but it is fully allowed, and it doesn't really matter technically from an SEO perspective. Google can handle it quite nicely. Dashes or underscores doesn't really make a difference either. Dashes is slightly easier to read for most people, so it's what I tend to do. But all of it doesn't really matter. But if I had something to say about it, I'd go for lowercase and dashes because that's the nicest.
You're picking the one from Carol?
Yeah, I think we just did that, didn't we?
Yeah.
The one below that. Could you give a bit more detail on the 3 vital core site speed areas that Google needs? Yeah, well, I can, but honestly, I'm not that good at that stuff. Core Web Vitals is what you need to Google. There are probably people at both SiteGround and at Yoast. My colleague John O. Alderson is one that comes to mind, knows a lot more about this. But basically, Google is measuring a couple of different things about site speed that impact you. It's the immediate load time. It's whether the page re-renders when everything's loaded. So whether the page moves as you're loading, which is something I find highly annoying, and now Google is getting rid of it all over the web, so I love that. But the funny thing is that one of the biggest things that impacts loading of a page like that is ads that are loading. And that those ads are often served by Google. So it's kind of hilarious too. But yeah, Web Vitals. I see someone in the chat sharing a link there to web.dev. I think that's indeed the best place to learn about this. It's Google's site about all these things. Web.dev/vitals has a lot of information.
We got a question that we received beforehand. It's basically Google is making search intent a very, very top priority thing. And we used to say over and over again that content is king. Do you have a new king in town, the search intent thing?
Well, yeah, I think good content was always tied to a certain intent. So if I want to learn about falcons, I'm probably searching for information. But if I'm living in a country where they keep falcons and where they hunt with falcons, I might actually have a purchase intent when I'm using that query. And then the result that I'm expecting is completely different. And so at that point, you need to give other types of content to me than if I were just learning about falcons, because I have to do a school presentation. So intent is very important for you to think about in regard to your content. What are people going to do with this? Why do I want to tell them about this? And Google is just what is happening more and more is that Google is getting better at understanding that intent and is matching the results it gives to people a lot better based on that. And I honestly, it's just something you need to think about. It's hard though. I'll admit that it's sometimes hard to cover the different intents that people have with one piece of content. So sometimes it means splitting it up or treating it differently. I saw the question in the chat there about WP Rocket or SG Optimizer.
I couldn't help myself.
I saw your smile. So we've been Yoast.com has been hosted by SiteGround for quite a while now, and we love it. Honestly, we run on a slightly different setup than the average WordPress site because it's more powerful. Yeah. It's slightly bigger, but for normal simple WordPress sites, SG Optimizer is awesome. So yeah, I'll give them that. They've done a really great job. Rito is asking, I read that Google no longer penalizes the same/double content. Is the statement true? Well, they never did. It's funny. First of all, duplicate content was never a penalty. Why people talked about a duplicate content penalty. The thing is that you're basically shooting yourself in the foot. Google doesn't have to do it for you. So the problem is that if you have multiple pages that all talk about the same topic and they all get links and Google doesn't know which of those ones it should show, then there really is, they are stealing away ranking power from each other. So it's not a penalty. It's much more that Google doesn't know which page it should show. So you should solve your duplicate content so you can combine these things and combine your ranking power into one page and with that rank a lot more easily. So it's never been a penalty. In general, when people talk about penalties in Google gives far less penalties than people think. Most of these things are not penalties. They're filters in an algorithm. And with duplicate content, it's not in any way a penalty. It is you shooting yourself in the foot. I like to talk about it much more in terms of keyword cannibalization, where you're cannibalizing yourself, where you have 10 pages that all try to rank for the same set of keywords. That is what you should prevent. Google isn't going to penalize you for that. You're going to help yourself by fixing that.
Do you think that this is, because in my experience, in most of the cases, this is more something technical that people are missing, like pagination, like missing canonical tags, stuff like that, rather than someone put an effort on building 5 different pages on the same topic?
Well, it's both. We see people that are writing a lot of content about the same topic because it's their thing, and then they start, especially over time, start competing with themselves. But it's definitely also stupid stuff, like WordPress ships with tags and categories by default. And it's one of those things that, could I go back 15 years in time? And I was in the WordPress community 15 years ago, so I could have at that point said, hey, should we just ditch one of those and keep the other? Because most sites are using both, and most sites don't really have a good use case to use both. Because in the end, it doesn't really matter. They do the same thing, and what people do is they write an article about SEO, and they add an SEO tag and an SEO category, and they do that to every article that they write about SEO. And by doing that, they create two category pages on their site, one tag and one category page, that are basically the same.
Yep.
Or the even worse scenario, they create a new tag for every post they write. And by that, they don't do anything because they create a whole lot of tag pages, but never those tag pages never combine any content in any meaningful ways. So there is a lot of ways to create duplicate content on the web, and people basically do all of them. But Google is not going to penalize you for it. You're shooting yourself in the foot.
I think that you have answered that pretty well. We moving to the one for Divi.
Where's Divi? Where is it?
It has many votes.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, I need to scroll sometimes for it to update. How can I optimize on-page SEO while using Divi? If you're using Yoast SEO, then I have high hopes that soon that will be resolved.
Perfect. On to the next one. Should I only use headers for content? What about categorized footer menu, newsletter sign-up forms, or related content that is present on the same page?
Oh, that's actually a good question, Dieter. So, if your page in modern HTML, you can do these things and not break anything. So in modern HTML, you could have an article tag within your content and then use headers within that article tag, and it would be very semantically correct to also have a sidebar with headings that are completely unrelated. So none of that would be a problem. Honestly, I don't think it's ever a problem. Google is pretty good at recognizing which bits of the page are truly the content. That's why we at Yoast have also never really we don't parse the full page. We parse the content because Google is doing just that. They are very good at ignoring your incredibly large footers and sidebars and just focusing on that content bit. So it doesn't really matter all that much. What matters much more is for you to use a proper heading structure within your articles and to use headings enough to make it a text easy to scan and easy to understand by reading the headings. In an ideal world, I could skim an article by just reading every heading and every first sentence of every paragraph.
That's usually how I read physical newspapers.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from Andrew. Any comment on effective schema types or ones you like, specifically receipts, events versus other types?
So honestly, I like two most of all because they are useful for pretty much everybody. That's FAQ and how-to. You can use that regardless of what you're doing. You can always write a how-to about something related to your content, and there are always frequently asked questions. So that I like those two the most. Then there are some that are very powerful, like jobs, recipe. Recipe, especially if you do recipe, so you don't do recipe schema, then you've already lost. Because there are no recipe results anymore that have results that don't have schema in them. So yeah, I like those. There's a lot of stuff coming around in the new schema stuff that's really nice. I still like local business schema as well because it has a lot of really granular things that are very useful. And there's also the bigger stuff like the organization schema and the stuff that we take from your settings and we generate automatically in Yoast SEO. But that really helps Google define who you are, and it helps get you knowledge graph results as well, and stuff like that.
What about what Google announced earlier this year about page experience signals that is going to roll out in May or something? How can you tell us more about this, and
Yeah.
how do you think about it?
So that is related to the core Web Vitals, and they use like 20 different terms to describe the same thing, as usual, because that's Google. Yeah. So what Google, I think Page Experience Factors actually explains much better what they try to do. They try to give the results to users that have the best page experience. And funnily enough, as much as you call SEO a vibrant thing, the funny thing is that if I look at SEO and I look at the advice I gave 10 years ago and I combine it with the advice I'm giving now, it didn't change all that much. The best tactic for being the number one result for a term is simply being the best result. So if you want to rank for something, you have to put a lot of effort into it to make sure that you are the best result, that you are the thing that would help the most amount of people that end up on that page. And it is as simple as that. And at the same time, it's extremely hard.
Just do good.
And just be the best.
Be the best.
Yeah.
You do very well.
Just be the best. Yeah.
Okay, plain and simple. Plain and simple. Want to answer that one from Natalie?
Yes, absolutely. The alt tags. How important is it for our images in 2021? Well, as far as I know, in 2021, we don't have any less blind people than we did in 2001. So you should still fill out your alt tags, if only for them. The alt attribute exists for accessibility, and of course it helps SEO, but don't do it for your SEO. Do it because you are nice to your fellow humans that have a hard time understanding the web if you don't. And honestly, I have a colleague, Christonosum Andrea Fercia from Italy. He works on accessibility, and he has done a lot of accessibility work for us on WordPress core as well. And his eyesight is poor, and it's not getting better. And if you see him scroll a page, then you realize, oh shit, this is what we're doing that stuff for. Because we're humans and we want to help other people browse the web. So do alt tags properly and use them properly, and not because it's an SEO thing. And of course it'll help. And of course it'll help if you for getting those images found. But there are things like alt tags and our alt attributes and headings that we do even more for those people than we do it for search engines.
That's a great answer. Accessibility is hard, but you should totally pay attention to it.
The funny thing is, if you really do accessibility well, you've done 80% of SEO.
Yeah,
it's very. Google is in many ways like a blind person. They're getting better at it, but it is, that is what it is. The question from Dieter on, is it worthy to upgrade from JPEG to WebP? Well, actually, from PNG to WebP seems like a good step. From JPEG to that other new AVIF format or whatever the format that's coming out, I honestly find all of that a lot of hard work. And I don't really like hard work, which is why we use Cloudflare. And they really should be paying me for as much as I recommend them. And the problem is that the opposite is true, and we pay them a lot of money for what they do for Yoast.com. I'm even wearing a Cloudflare t-shirt. I mean, it's that bad. But yeah, so we use Cloudflare to do that. And SiteGround has a great integration with Cloudflare as well that you can use to automatically change your PNGs to WebP. It will help a lot. It makes your images smaller, and thus your pages smaller and faster. So yeah, it's a good idea, and there's a lot happening in that space because there's new video formats and new image formats coming out. Because, well, actually, everybody's optimizing for that. We all want good-looking pages with images, and we all want those images to be 1 byte, and that's not possible. So we're all optimizing.
Yeah, and even if you're not using Cloudflare, if you're with SiteGround, you can literally have it a copy of your images created in web format and served automatically, like literally in one click with the SG Optimizer. That's one of the things in SiteTools, our new system. So you should take a look at it.
I didn't know that.
You don't
That's
have
awesome.
it for your environment, but still we're
Well, I might
preparing
have it.
something
My
special for you.
Yoast blog is on a very simple environment. I should check it out there.
Yep, it's literally a button named generate WebP copies of my images.
That is cool. Yeah, very cool. The question from Vesna there: what are the best tools for keyword research in 2021? Well, the best tool for keyword research in 2021 is the same tool as that was the best tool for keyword research in 2001 and in 1990. It's your head. Think about your keywords yourself. Tools can help you verify traffic, can help you verify your ideas, but good keyword research starts by thinking and talking to your customer support about the language that your customers are using when they talk about your product. You don't get to decide which keywords they search for. You don't get to decide which what they call what you do. They decide that themselves. So honestly, the first thing you should do is if you have a customer support team, or if you do support in any way, go talk to them, go sit with them, go see how people describe their questions. That's a great source of understanding which keywords people use and what questions they have that you should be writing about. If you're a small shop, then it really is the same. Every time someone asks you a question, whether you're in the store or somewhere else, and you think like, oh wait, I'm explaining this, I'm taking a couple of minutes to explain something to a customer. That's probably something that you could also write down and make an article from. It really is talking to them in the language that they want and giving the answers to their problems and their questions.
Marking this as answered.
First time I've ever heard of Schema. Well, Adrian, allow me a bit of free advertising for Yoast. Please, we have a Yoast SEO Academy where we have a course on schema and structured data that will teach you everything about it. If you want to, there's a free and a paid version, and well, go do that. It's pretty awesome. And you get to see a whole lot of me and my lovely wife on video. My wife Marika is our CEO, so that is.
It's indeed a very, very good source of. So every time someone asks me an SEO question, I send them over to the Yoast Academy. It's an endless resource of good articles.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's just the truth. Are you picking another question?
Yeah, the one from David there is awesome. In the schema section, it says Yoast SEO automatically describes your page using schema. Yes, we do. And I can only change a couple of settings. Yes, you can. And I know there are other plugins out there that give you 50 million options to change schema settings. And the thing is that we don't want everyone in the world to be able to need to understand schema to be able to run this. So what we very often do with these things is we make it as simple as we humanly can, because we have 11 million users, and if we make things hard to use, we'll get a lot of questions. And as much as we love getting questions, answering all of them takes a lot of time that we'd rather spend doing other things. So what we do is we take your settings, and there's a couple of settings that you need to fill out that are important. In Yoast SEO, there is the search appearance settings in the admin area, and then there on the first tab there's a knowledge graph settings bit that asks whether you're a person or an organization, and it asks for the name of that thing. And if you're an organization, it asks for your logo. Fill those out. That bit is important. Then the other bit is, if you're as an author, go to your WordPress profile and fill out your proper name and and fill out the profile fields that it has there. Why? Because if you as an author, are also active on Twitter or on Facebook or on LinkedIn, filling in those profile URLs there will add it to the schema, and it will allow Google to see, like, hey, this person is the same as that person. It will allow them to verify your credentials, and that's literally what Google is doing these days. It's collecting all these dots. It's building this knowledge graph where it's collecting who you are and what you're doing as a company and as a person, and assigning topics to that you know about, that it knows that you know about. So it's slowly building this web, and what you need to do is give it a couple of anchor points where it can tie you to the rest of your online personality. Other than that, you don't have to do anything. We do most of that work for you, because most of the stuff that needs to be in schema is pretty basic stuff. It's when was this article published? Which language is this article in? What's the URL of this article, etc. We know all that. We don't have to ask you for it.
I think we have one duplicate with schema.
No, it's not duplicate. It's Google is showing much more in the search results. Yes, it is. And should you be frightened by that? The fact that Google is showing more from your site directly in the search results? Well, maybe. If the only way you're making money is by people coming to your site and seeing ads, then yes, you should be frightened by that. But then you probably also should start looking at another business model. If you're selling something or you're providing a service around that, then it really isn't that much of a problem. I don't really care if you're getting the results straight from the Google search result pages or whether you're ending up on Yoast.com, as long as you're getting your questions answered. And I think that'll go for a lot of people. What I want is for you to have the best possible experience when you search for Yoast questions. And if that means that Google can already give it to you straight away and you don't have to make that last click and you can just go from there, I'm fine with that. And I think you should be too. In the end, it's about having a good experience with your brand. But if you sell ads and you live from purely selling ads, you might want to think about what your added value is and whether you can sustain that for a long term. If that is really long form content, then I don't think you have to worry. If it's really short stuff that Google can just show in the search result easily, well, then you need to change.
Marking this as answered. And another question I want to ask you that was sent before that. We have seen many people coming up to building their websites, starting new stores, especially now with the COVID crisis going on and on and on. And we've seen a large number of businesses that were completely brick and mortar coming up to the web. What SEO tips you would give for someone who is starting a new website, like someone who is just going online?
So if you're a brick and mortar store, you're a physical store and you're just coming online, make sure that you optimize your local stuff well first. So make sure that you set up your Google My Business account and make all of that information correct and set up your local schema correct. You can do that with local SEO, one of our plugins, or in other ways. And make sure that you show up on Google Maps and that you've optimized what people see on Google Maps. Because even when you're closed, people will still see that result and will still get from that result to your website to order stuff. Then don't make it too hard on yourself. Do the stuff that you can easily do. So don't try and compete with Amazon in terms of e-commerce functionality, because that's not what you're going to win on. What you should win on is the quality of your service, the human touch, and the things that you can offer that an Amazon can't offer. So look at that and look at, hey, how can we make this as human an experience as possible? Because I think that one of the things that we forget oftentimes when we create websites is that the human touch and the thing that I want to buy from my local retailers, which a lot of people want to do, we should make that as easy as possible. But even if there's a couple of things that they need to do that are a bit harder, if they see your face on that website and they can connect to you as a person and as a local retailer, that really might get them to go the extra mile and take a couple more steps. So do that and optimize and getting a good image on there from you and your site and your shop. Optimize going for that feeling. Because I think that's the best thing you can do.
Thank you for that answer. We have time for a few more questions. I would like you, if possible, to answer the one from Laurent. You didn't mention about guest post, how important it is in SEO and Google ranking. What are the best practices? It's an ongoing subject for quite some time. So
yeah, guest posts have been a topic for a decade, if not more. I have some very old slides with Matt Cutts when he was still at Google and myself joking on Twitter about guest posts. Honestly, I don't care about that whole topic all that much. You're right. What you have a website, you need content for that site that is good for your users, and it needs to connect to what you're trying to do with your site. Whether you write that or someone else write that, I don't really care. Whether that content links out to other stuff, if you truly trust what you're linking out to, then that's fine. If you don't trust what you're linking out to, then you shouldn't do it. Should you be writing guest posts on other sites? Well, is that useful to you and to the readers that you're writing for? Might it engage a new audience for you? Well, then by all means do it. If you can open up a new source of visitors to your site by writing on another blog and getting those visitors to visit your site, do it. But don't do it as an SEO strategy. It really isn't worth it like that. And don't pay for articles like that or stuff. All of that doesn't work. The best SEO advice I can give you is to do proper marketing, proper like old school marketing, and that might actually you might have very good reasons to do a guest post on another blog, because that audience is very close to you, and you might exchange that. For instance, there's great reasons to do that. Don't do it as an SEO tactic.
Marking this as answered. Want to pick up the next one?
Key ideas for improving website speed. Yeah. So I'll do Christo the honor of saying, well, if you're on a bad host, move to SiteGround. If you're not on a bad host, because there are a lot of good hosts in the area, of course. First of all, clean up your theme. There are so many sites, whether you're on Joomla, WordPress, Magento, whatever. There's so many designs out there that load a whole lot of JavaScript and CSS to do absolutely nothing, that you have to clean that up. Now, if you're not a developer, that stuff is actually hard. And if you are a developer, that stuff is probably even harder in some ways, because it's not easy. It really isn't easy to make a site fast. But it is something that you should learn about, and it is something that you can learn about. So use Google's Lighthouse. It's built into Chrome. It can help you test your site for speed, and it actually gives very good feedback on stuff that you can do to improve. So you need to go do it. It's not optional not to know about that anymore. And a site that takes more than a couple of seconds to load is really not an option anymore either. So yeah, just go do it.
Great.
Get started is usually the hardest thing about all of this.
Great answer. And if I might add, don't get too much dragged into following numbers like scores in certain test speeds. Again, be human.
Yeah,
that always helps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Want to pick up a last one?
Well, so I can do the ad. Susan, there's a lot of reasons why you should do Yoast SEO Premium. First of all, because it pays for us bringing out a lot of awesome content, and it pays for us building Yoast SEO in the first place. We have a lot of cool stuff in there. We have a reasons to upgrade page that I'll link on in the chat right now, so that you then we can go on to one last question. You get to pick the last question.
I wanted to give that one, but I'm using Yoast Pro for so long that I don't even remember what's in the free version.
Love you.
Otherwise, I would have given people some advice, but I have literally been using it since what, 7 years or something on all SiteGround blogs, knowledge base, tutorial system, which are all WordPress powered. So, good question from Jeanette. Is it bad to have a site structure that's flat? Every article is off the root domain without subfolders. Can breadcrumbs and navigation help without having to restructure our entire website with subfolders?
I don't think you need subfolders. What you do need is to use some sort of categorization or tagging system to combine stuff. So, what you need to make Google and other search engines, because most of them actually all follow the same system. What you need to help them understand which content is related to each other, and then it'll see that you've written a lot about specific topics, and it'll identify you as a good source for content around that topic. So whether you use tags or categories doesn't really matter, but adding those will actually help. It'll also help your users if they want to learn more about specific things, to go to that tag page and then be able to browse your site more easily. And then that you can use the tag or category in your breadcrumb, and it's pretty easy like that. So I would say that is probably the best way of doing that, and I wouldn't move all those things to other URLs, because I don't think that really is going to make all that much of a difference.
Well, thank you very much for answering these questions and the rest of the questions. It was a pleasure as usual talking to you, and I think that people really appreciate the really valuable advice you gave today. We should be doing this more often.
Well, anytime, especially when I don't have to do presentations. I love doing the Q&A part even more. So I'm up for this as often as you want.
We can totally skip the presentation part, of course. And I think people like us answering them questions much better than your slides, although they're very nice.
My design team is awesome, but preparing slides is just, I'm going to tell people stuff they already know.
Yep. Thank you so very much. Just some final words for me. There's going to be a recording in this. We upload all the webinars that we create on the SiteGround Facebook channel. Please subscribe and make sure you watch it at the time that's most suitable for you, in the comfort of your home. Goodbye from me, and have a great day or night whenever you are. Bye.
Bye, everyone.